It's 4 o'clock, so we will go ahead and call to order the second monthly meeting of the City of Hendersonville City Council, Wednesday, July 28th, 2021. And I will just go ahead and turn it over to the city manager to go through our presentations.
Thank you, Mayor Vogt. Mayor Vogt, members of City Council, members of the audience. In just a minute, I'll recognize Commissioner of Labor, Josh Dotson, who's here to present a special award to Station 2 of the Fire Department. But before I do, I did this a little early. I want to make sure I recognize the efforts of Luann Welter and Chief James Miller. 5 years ago, we took the initiative to really focus on our safety program and had the opportunity of moving Luann into a position as our safety officer and wellness coach and a jack of all trades. And so Luann took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and has really lifted up our safety program, brought in the Department of Labor through consultative services and went around and has visited every site that we have, spot checked our crews on the job, have done a wonderful job with our safety program. And just this past month, she introduced her and Chris Connard from our engineering department a new safety initiative called Ask Me. It really is focusing on reminding all of us that work for the city that we should watch out for ourselves, but each other in all, whether it's on the job site, whether it's in the office, whether it's at home or on in some person's business. So it's about developing that safety culture. And I just want to thank Luann publicly again for the efforts that she has done or gone forward with as it relates to the city. And one of the culminations at this point after 5 years is a special award that Station 2 of the fire department received, and it is related to how well they keep their station from a safety perspective and meeting all the OSHA requirements from hygiene and chemicals, storage, and everything from the, and maybe Commissioner Dotson can talk a little bit more about that, or Luann can give you a tutorial after this meeting. But I just want to recognize them and ask Commissioner Dotson to please come up and present the mayor and Chief Miller with an award, and I'll turn it over to him.
You can make that happen. Thank you, City Manager Conant. Mayor Vogt, members of the council, it is an honor for me to be here, and it's kind of special in a personal way, being from Western North Carolina, just down the mountain in McDowell County, and recently elected Commissioner of Labor. This is my first Sharp presentation, so it's kind of special to me to be here. So it's really an honor. I mentioned some of this over at the fire station, but we see so much divisiveness. We see so much pettiness and hyper partisanship. I think most people are hungry for something good. And what Luann and Chief Miller and the staff here in Hendersonville have done to get this Sharp recognition is something good. It's something good for Western North Carolina. It's something good for Hendersonville. And I just couldn't be prouder to be here. And to put it into context, the North Carolina Department of Labor regulates approximately 250 to 270,000 private and public sector businesses and organizations in the state of North Carolina. Approximately 200 of you have received this Sharp award. So we don't hand it out lightly, and we don't take it lightly. So Mayor Vogt, council members, City Manager Conant, for you all to take the lead and to allow Chief Miller and the whole department here behind me to make this commitment to safety and the good things that you all are doing here. I couldn't be happier to make this presentation And it's an honor for me and our staff here at the Department of Labor to have a small role in it. So thank you so much. And with that, if you'll come up, we'll make this presentation. Chief Bill and Mayor Bolt, City of Hendersonville Fire Department Station 2. This is to acknowledge that the City of Hendersonville Fire Department Station 2, located at 632 Sugarloaf Road, Hendersonville, North Carolina, is hereby recognized as a sharp public sector employer. Madam Mayor, well-deserved congratulations.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Nice to meet you.
So congratulations to all you guys. We appreciate it.
Hello, can you hear me? Madam Mayor and Council, thank you for letting me speak with you this afternoon. I'm excited to come as not only as downtown manager, but also with the Friends of Downtown, which is our nonprofit that is ran by the downtown division at the City of Hendersonville, but also is what our events go through. And we come with good news that we won a grant. And we're able to announce that today. It's an AARP Community Challenge Grant that was just announced this morning. The grant program is for people, a grant program to make communities more livable for people of all ages, with tangible improvements that jumpstart long-term change. This is the 5th year of this grant program. And we're one of 244 communities in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Virgin Islands that have received this grant. The grants are for quick action. I'll probably be saying quick a few times through the rest of this. So the proposal that we submitted for the grant from the Friends of Downtown was for a sidewalk mural from along 5th Avenue to connect the Main Street and 7th Avenue districts. A part of that is to continue on with the connection of Main Street and 7th Avenue, just as we did with merging the Downtown Advisory Committee and the 7th Avenue Advisory Committee to be the Downtown Advisory Board. This project would be a sidewalk mural project that involves the community and does some creative things with the spaces. Quick is what I keep on saying. We want to keep the project simple because it has to be done in a very short time frame. A part of the grant is that they have to be completed before the end of November. So starting today, we've got a call for artwork to be submitted between now and August 10th. And anybody in the community can submit ideas. You don't necessarily have to have huge artistic skills or abilities because some of the examples you'll see are just for patterns and design styles. Between August 12th and 23rd, when we have several downtown events from our Love Hendo Saturday, Rhythm and Brews and Farmers Market, we'll let the community give feedback and vote on what they like. Towards the end of August, we'll announce, and then in September have a painting day. So we want to let the community all be involved with that. A part of the design requirements that we'd have with that are no logos or commercial speech or advertising. We just want it to be a design with the only exception of something I'll give some examples of here in a few minutes. no more than 5 colors. We want to keep the whole project simple, so that way it can be successful between now and the end of November. Keeping that simple and just making sure that it's able for volunteers and people in the community to participate. The sidewalk would be able, we've got Fifth Avenue anywhere between King Street and Maple Street. So we've got a long length of sidewalk. So we'd be looking at any type of designs that may be able to be repeated. So that way we can kind of evaluate based off the designs that we get. People can submit, anyone of all ages can submit on just a hand-drawn a sketch or anything like that on an 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 piece of paper, or in a template in the application. These are a few of the ideas, just as I was Googling sidewalk murals, anywhere from the ones on the left side of the screen that are more geometric patterns, just colorful, bright. And then when I was talking about words and languages, on the right side of the screen had some fun interactive murals that I saw examples of. The one at the top, it says, "Don't step on the lava." So you can kind of see people hopping around on the sidewalk there. The below one is looks like Pac-Man, but it's a labyrinth where people can walk through, and was about harvest material. So thought of that for a fit for the farmer's market. The middle was a Monopoly board that someone created. And then the top wasn't a mural, but it was brass feet for dance steps. So people might be dancing along Fifth Avenue. And then, like I said, to the left of the page was some geometric designs. And that bottom one was it's in Charlotte, and it's a magic carpet path that you can do. So this is just the final thing that I have to say on this. I'm really excited about working with AARP and building this partnership with them. The folks from the Western Carolina district of AARP have already been talking with us and want to be involved in the project and help with it in any way they can. And so we're just really excited to be able to have a fun, artistic and creative project for downtown and connecting the districts. And that's all I've got for you today. I'd take any questions or comments.
Questions, comments? Well, knowing what the Chalk It Up sidewalk artists did, I'm sure that we have some very creative people that will be happy to participate.
I spoke with Miss Barbara today and said, I'm going to be talking with you very soon about making sure we get the word out to the Chalk It Up artists.
Is it on one side? Because part of it has two sidewalks.
We would more than likely be looking at the side opposite of the gray mill. The left side, if you're walking that way. I have talked with Public Works and they were already planning on resurfacing that sidewalk anyway. So it'd be a nice fresh template for us to work on. And so we'll just kind of see as we go what space works depending on the designs that we get.
I just got scolded. So.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, King Street pedestrian improvements, South Main roundabout concept.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to introduce Jonathan Guy from Kimley Horn. City Council discussed, if you remember back in February, some of the big ideas that you all discussed, a couple which were narrowing King Street and providing some connectivity, pedestrian connectivity between downtown, the east side, and 7th Avenue, and as well as park development, and specifically planning for the Augusta Trail was mentioned. And fortunately, we have some opportunities to look at both with some upcoming NCDOT projects that are in our area. And construction can be challenging, but we may have some opportunities. And like I said, Jonathan Guy is here to present. And if you have any questions.
Brent, appreciate it. And Mayor, council members, thank you so much for this opportunity to come spend time with you today. It's
it's nice to be in person and not on a screen. So I'm going to walk you through a couple different things today. As Brent said, we were looking at two different projects. You can kind of see the locations of those projects today up on your screen right now with the confluence of the roundabout that NCDOT is currently working through. And then, of course, looking a little bit further north up along North King Street. And so let's dive in. There we go. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk through both of these concepts. And so let's dive into the North King Street first and walk through a couple things with that. So it's one of your northern couplets. It's moving traffic one way through there. You've got closely spaced signals, as you can see on the graphic, and it's one of those streets that changes throughout. It starts out as 2 lanes, and as it continues to go north, we pick up an additional lane through there. Because it is one way, you've got, even though you got a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit posted there, you do have some speeds that can increase through there. As the downtown begins to grow, which is fantastic, having watched it grow over the past 20 years, you're starting to have more pedestrians in this area. Because of that, we need to look at a couple solutions. And you've got some really interesting, let's see if this had a laser pointer on it. You got some really interesting sidewalk networks out here and lack of sidewalk networks out here. So it's important for us to look at this. And so when Brent reached out to us, he said, look at this, develop a couple concepts. Let's talk through this and let's kind of think about some things that you're seeing, utilities, improvements that have already been there. Let's walk through this and kind of and talk a little bit about this some more. So this is the section we were looking at, 2nd Avenue all the way up to 5th, and looking really at the blocks in between the signalized intersections. You've already got pedestrian improvements at those locations, and so they're in good shape, but the connectivity between the two, especially between 3rd and 4th on the west side through there, you got some interesting driveways and topography, building locations, all of that's kind of influencing how things work. And so looking at that and developing a couple concepts was our charge. And then really, how do we manage the traffic between these 2 points? Because this is where the transition occurs today, where we go from 2 to 3. Is there a reason for the 2 to 3 occurring where it currently does between 2nd and 3rd, or could we delay that a little bit further? So we looked at that as well. So the first concept you're going to see here really starts to depict how we could implement some improvements along the corridor, utilizing the additional 3rd lane and then developing it once we passed 4th Street. And because of that, it gives us opportunities to provide on-street parking. It also gives us an opportunity to put in a generous sidewalk and give us more of a buffer between buildings that are at the intersection there with 3rd and North Kings. And then at each of the intersections, updating the sidewalk ramps, the connectivity of those, where they are in the orientation of those, so that you are directing the pedestrians as you would like to as they cross the street. Now, the block in between 3rd and 2nd, as I've mentioned, is interesting. In particular, the intersection there around 2nd Avenue, right where you see the First Contact resale store. You'll notice there's 2 driveways. They have diagonal parking. Parking is not contiguous, yet there is an alleyway that runs in between their building and the Detours nightclub, their parking lot, which is up there. Having worked in urban communities for a long time, and one of the things that you'll find from a congestion standpoint and just a safety for a pedestrian standpoint, anytime we can shift the locations of our driveways further away from the influence area of the intersection, not only does it make it safer, but it also improves traffic flow. With the 2 driveways there, you'll see on the next concept, what we've done is we've actually reversed the flow of traffic there. So we've taken that driveway out, put some generous plantings through there to kind of give a nice buffer between the parking lot and where the sidewalk is. But we've oriented it so that you have better access to that. We even think that there's a few more spots that we could even pick up. Because of that, maybe on 2nd Street, we could pick up an additional spot or 2 to offset some of the spots that they're losing. They would be on-street parking spaces, but it would give better flow and circulation for that building. More importantly, it locates the one driveway in the alleyway or the common access easement that runs in between and connects up to the alley. And so it really starts to set up a more program and focused access for that, but it helps the pedestrians as they're going through there. So transitioning over, because it didn't change from the last section, I'll talk about the section of the third and fourth. We took the lane out there, and there was some recent improvements that were done by the city where some really nice landscaping, we put in a sidewalk through there, we put it up next to the parking. Well, you can notice that there's a few little crossover spots through there where we're saying, okay, you got parking, we'll be able to kind of come across to hit the sidewalk. I'll tell you, it's not the best layout. It makes it a little more awkward for a pedestrian or a parent or an individual who is exiting their car to navigate down in between parked cars, walking along the alley or the gutter pan, if you will, to these crossover locations to get to the alley, or excuse me, to the sidewalk. So this third concept for this, we actually take out what we've just put in and we kind of flip the two. So we buffer the parking and we move the sidewalk in the place of where the plantings were, which puts it in a more logical spot when you have on-street parking. It also makes a more direct connection as you come up the sidewalk. Gives you a couple opportunities for the bulb outs there, but now it makes the parking more functional from a standpoint of access from the sidewalk. And so as you look across this and you look at concept C up here, this would be one of those options that if you were going to implement everything, this would be the option that I would tell you to move with, because it does, it puts the sidewalks in the places where they need to be, provides the buffer between the parked cars and the sidewalk. It offsets the sidewalk and it helps to control traffic through here. Any questions before we shift gears and move down to the roundabout? Questions here on the King Street sidewalk scenarios that I can answer?
So thank you, Jonathan. I'll point out a couple of things. Just, I know it's I've looked at it a couple of times, a couple of things to think about. Obviously, the conversation we would have to have with the folks at First Contact, the owner of that property, as it relates to closing that driveway, would be a conversation we would have to have. In addition, I think I appreciate Jonathan's design, because one of the things I was concerned about as far as it relates to the on-street parking between third and fourth is you're parking on the left side of the road there as you head north, is opening the doors into the plant bed. And I think we've struggled with moving that sidewalk, but ultimately, even though because the sidewalk's not that old, but at the end of the day, I think we felt like putting a sidewalk there moving the sidewalk to adjacent to the street's a better option versus having people open the doors and walk through that plant bed. It just didn't seem to work. I showed this to Councilman Smith, and who's out today on vacation, and the only other option would be to just, I guess we could just do a grass strip, take the landscaping out and do a grass strip but then you're going to have sidewalks worn there anyway, right? I mean, because as people walk across the grass. So I think the idea, but the discussion from a council perspective is if we want that off-street or that on-street parking, we would recommend putting a sidewalk next to the curb and shifting where the plant bed is there. So a couple of design things and conversation that we would have with the community, but and that is extending it all the way to 4th Avenue, and then after 4th it becomes 3 lanes again.
One of the things to bring to your attention to is that NCDOT will be resurfacing this street within the next year and a half. And so being able to take advantage, pre-position yourself so that you're taking advantage of their resources. They're going to come back in, they're going to put down crosswalks, their stop bars, pavement markings and things like that. The infrastructure, there potentially could be some working with them on that, depending on what that would look like. But being able to take advantage of what can be a very significant cost associated with asphalt, and the timing of that is something to be aware of as well.
Do you see that they would have major objections to removing that lane for those few blocks?
I don't. Operationally, it doesn't impact the movements through there. We're not picking up a lot of traffic from 2nd or 3rd. And so it's a natural transition. It's 2 blocks up. You're talking about 600 feet, which are really changing the pattern when you look at the block structure that's there. So from a from both a macro level and a micro level operational standpoint, it will not adjust level of service to a point that, they would say, whoa, what are you doing in my streets? And I think that with their complete streets policy, they would recognize the benefit that this provides. We're talking about a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit through here. And it's all based off of time, density, and speed through there from level of service. The one lane's not adding that much capacity over the hour when you look at it from a level of service standpoint. Taking it away is not going to have a detrimental impact. And you've already got 2 lanes to the south, so it's just slightly bringing that up a little bit further.
How about when people are parallel parking?
That's a good question.
That's going to be,
It can slow things down for sure. It can be disruptive. At that speed though, it's not as disruptive as what you might find in other locations. And so while it is a consideration, I don't want to diminish that. It is something that I don't think is going to have a operational detriment long-term. When you look at when you start to see parking really occur in these locations, off-peak times and weekends is when parking along this section might be more utilized. And volumes are different than they would be in the peak hour at that time. And because of that, that's why I don't think it's as disruptive as what it might be other times of the day, when it might be more or less utilized.
King Street really moves traffic pretty well compared to, at least from my standpoint, Church Street. Church Street seems kind of creep at times, especially when people are parking because there's both sides.
Right.
And once we incorporate even one block of one side parking, and we've taken it from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, which I totally agree. We need to take it to 2 lanes just so we can get sidewalks down there. That's just like Suicide Alley.
Yeah.
If you're walking. But I am concerned in front of Azalea that having parking there, that brings us down to 1 lane of traffic when they're gumming that up.
But we don't have to have parallel parking there, do we?
I mean, that's just what
Wouldn't
that's
have to.
showing.
Okay.
That's just, I'm going off of what is presented. To me, I would rather not, but
Sure. It's an option. And what I'll say is that in lieu of that, you could have a wider sidewalk through there if you didn't want the parking through there. From a cost standpoint, it's going to be, obviously the increase in the sidewalk width, but configuration, probably a wash because you're taking out the asphalt that would go in that location.
Sure.
So from a constructability standpoint, both would work. I don't think that the impact associated with parking is going to be so great that it would diminish operations every single day and to a point that it would slow traffic down detrimentally through there. A couple of things that come to mind, just thinking of how the traffic moves through here. There's less disruption on King Street because of the side street influence. Whereas on Church Street, you have more side street influence at each of the blocks. Parking is a consideration, but this is one-sided, primarily loaded. The east side is less of an influence from a traffic standpoint, and that's one of the reasons that it does flow well through here is because of that. You don't have the disruptions at every single signal, longer time periods, and so that does make a difference with people's speeds and their perception of traffic movement.
I have a business between 4th and 5th Avenue on the west side.
Right.
And you can just give up getting out of our business and going east. You have to go up and go left, come back down Main Street, or I've seen the local knowledge used going into the parking lot across from City Hall.
Yep.
Go up through it and then get in line on 5th Avenue and come back across. I've been guilty of that myself. So.
I always say this, traffic is like water. It always finds the path of least resistance, and it's intuitive. So it'll figure out those little nuances in the traffic pattern for ways to adjust. And I imagine your observations would also indicate the traffic's probably not traveling 20 miles per hour either along that section.
True.
And so that's a big part of it too. And they can be disruptive. If the
And it
traffic
dumps
is-
off of Fourth and Fifth onto King Street to go on north. You know, it's at a standstill for a lot of the time. They're creeping.
I'm sure.
I know it has nothing to do with your presentation here, but any suggestions you have to keep people from turning the wrong way on King Street? Saw someone again yesterday going the wrong way down King
You can
Street.
watch it all the time.
I know.
They come in my lot the wrong way, horns blowing.
Yeah.
It's entertaining.
Interestingly enough, I just did a presentation to Lake City, South Carolina. They had just converted a one-way street, and that was one of the things they asked me to do was, how do we stop people from going down the wrong way? And there's some things you can do, and a lot of times it just comes down to education and continually educating people.
Lou and I argued some when they were redesigning the parking lot across from City Hall. I just knew everybody was going to come out of that parking lot and go right. Lou said, you got to have faith that we can get some of them right. And I hate to admit it, Lou was right. Well, I'm glad actually, because they'd been going the wrong way if I'd have been right. But it took a little bit, but yeah, they did learn and, you know, get some signage there and some horns blowing.
Absolutely.
People don't usually repeat that mistake.
Signage, pavement markings, little design features that, indicate that go a very long way to helping with that and education. So any other questions on this section of King Street before we head down the street? Okay,
Go
fantastic.
ahead, Jonathan.
All right, so let's go down the street to South Main and the confluence of King and Church. And so just to kind of set the stage of what's going on here, we got a lot happening. You've got some projects that are going on. DOT is doing something, and you got some great news with the acoustic trail coming in here. You've got a force main that's going to be putting in from a sewer standpoint there on the east side. DOT's got the roundabout, which is now back up and moving after the pandemic and the slowdown that came through DOT funding. And as I said, the acoustic trail is coming. And so you have all these different things that are kind of coming together to really create something special at this location. It's always been one of those iconic locations where the couplets come together. You're down in the valley through there, you're crossing Mud Creek, and you're transitioning out of downtown into a more suburban area. So it really kind of stands out as this is a unique place, if you will. And so with DOT's project, it's given us an opportunity to kind of think this. And as Brent asked us to take a look at that, and we started looking at it, all these things started happening and started popping in, if you will, with the acoustic trail, and then of course the sewer project that's going on. And so as we started to think through that, we started to think about what could we do. DOT is going to be taking out a lot of your gateway signage that's down there, the flagpoles, the sign, other elements like that. Traffic patterns are going to change. Traffic patterns may even change even further at some point in the future relative to King and Church. And so we started to really look at the area. How does it sort of lay out? And so as I sort of build to the design, the concept design that we've sort of laid out for that area, there's some things that we need to consider. The whole east side over there is low and it's wet. And I remember, having pictures of this area completely underwater. And so it's one of those things that really kind of divides the area, but it could also be something that could bring us together because it's not flooded all the time. And so it's a great opportunity to connect both sides, if you will, and sort of park areas to the north and the residential areas that are over there on the east side with residential areas on the west side as a part of the acoustic trail. Some other things to kind of pay attention to is you guys own a lot of property. You may actually get some more property in the future. And this is just highlighting some of those properties that you can see in the area that come close to, that touch the area, that are going to be important as we kind of talk about options with this. So DOT's project. So you may have seen these, and these plans are actually being updated as we speak right now. But they're proposing a single lane roundabout with somewhat of a bypass lane that would connect you up onto King Street. Church Street would be coming in and would cycle through the roundabout. Roundabouts, I'll go ahead and just say, are fantastic. They work well when you get used to them. And they are very good at managing traffic that's at a controllable volume. And the volumes that have been looked at this location, from a traffic standpoint, a pure traffic standpoint, it's going to work really, really well. And there's some options here to make this even better. And we've shared those with NCDOT. We've made this so that it has the ability to be adapted in the future. Now, when we look at the acoustic trail coming through here following the railroad, we know that it's going to come up, it's going to hit Main Street, and then just past King Street, as I understand the agreement, is 0.1 miles past that. There's a little bit of section that comes across. The two blue parcels that are highlighted right there are total takes by NCDOT as a part of this their right-of-way acquisition associated with the railroad. They back up to Mud Creek. When they put in the roundabout and they take their driveways away, it just gets really too close. There's not enough parking lots. So DOT is going to end up taking both of those. And that's an opportunity as we look at it. So as we started to move past the evaluation of the roundabout, and then we were asked to start to look at how do we enhance this roundabout in some conversations we had with NCDOT, we were asked to put together something to think about. And so we've developed really just something to spark conversation, and it's something to think through on what could be at this location. As I mentioned, roundabouts are great for moving traffic. They're also great creating a gateway into a downtown. And so there's opportunities here from additional signage standpoint within the midst of the roundabout to indicate you're in downtown Hendersonville in the middle of the roundabout. You can see the trail that's coming down from the top of the page coming across. In the area that's at the very bottom of the page, you can see here, it's got two different metrics associated with that. One, it's the property that we indicated in blue. It's adjacent to Mud Creek. And it has the ability there, because of the access configuration and location, it could be a trailhead. Trail goes beyond Main Street, covers this area. It could also be a tiny little park in that area that's really not going to be usable for a whole lot of things other than that. But it begins to set the tone for connectivity in the future, as well as to the north with the acoustic trail. Now, when you go back and you start to think about what can happen with property that you own and the other parks that you have in the area, this can be the catalyst for starting to connect those. You've got the sewer project that's going through. You can connect along the sewer easement up to parks. You can begin to connect across over to the neighborhoods associated with the Harris Teeter. So the roundabout really starts to become this interesting point for all modes of mobility, not just moving cars. It begins to become a point where people start to meet, creates the gateway to your downtown, and it starts to connect both sides of town, not through a vehicle, but through bicycle and pedestrian movements at that point. So the concept that's laid out here is really just that. It's a concept. It's just a catalyst for us to start thinking through what we would want to do, how we would want to connect, how we would want to move traffic through here. Whether there's a pavilion here, there's another bridge that comes across and connects into the floodplains there back behind the pharmacy. There's 1,000 different things that we could start to do just from this one piece of property. So that was really the inspiration for this, is to start thinking through. Much like North King Street, there's an opportunity here for DOT to begin laying some of the foundation for enhancements. They are impacting your signage, they're impacting your flags and all of the nice gateway that you've created so far. There's an opportunity for them to replace in kind what they are taking out. That could be the beginnings of this. Will they pay for this full park? Probably not. But the question starts to come up, what are you going to do with two parcels that you're not going to deal anything with? Can't do anything with. So maybe that's something that comes to the city. Maybe that's part of the negotiation process with them. And that begins to lay that foundation for that connectivity. And so that's really the genesis of this. Certainly, if we decide to move forward with any of these things, we've got a couple options here. We've got the options to go with NCDOT for some of the landscaping, which they've already talked about. They want to know how we're going to irrigate. They're wanting to know what kind of planting plans we would have through this location. And certainly those details can be worked out. But I think the graphic really starts to tell a story of what can really happen to a section of town that's really going to spark change along this corridor, at least on the east side, as you start to look at the lower section of Main Street, and then you start to look at what happens along King Street. I lived in Charlotte for 20 plus years of my career and have worked there on the south end. And I remember when I was going to school at UNC Charlotte, you would never go to South End. You didn't want to go down there in the late 80s and early 90s when I was in school. It was a place you just did not go. A lot of warehouses. In early 2006, I guess it was about 2005, 2006, Kimley Horn moved their offices to an old mill there. Right about the time the light rail was being completed there on the south side. It got to a point where it became so popular when we would hire new graduates, they all lived and they rode their bikes to work along the Greenway. The light rail was not really the catalyst that changed South End. It was the trail that changed South End because that's where everyone could meet, they could greet, and they could walk up and down. And so thinking ahead and having seen that, that's what you're going to see with the acoustic trail. It's a fantastic project that's coming to your community. Be prepared for some change that's going to happen because it's going to change how your lower end of downtown is today. It all starts with a project like this, though. And this is a part that you can pick up on and start to build some of that foundation. So any questions that you might have about this?
Questions?
That's a lot. I'm sorry.
So there'll be a lot of them as comes along with this. Really, it's pretty exciting.
It is. It's great. It's a fantastic opportunity that's being presented to you guys. I mean, just from a mobility standpoint, it's a really cool opportunity here with not only the circulation of the roundabout and its operations, but the trail, the impact of the trail. And there's going to be some changes to the concept that you've seen here when we work with NCDOT on the update to that. How do we bring the trail in? Is it really going to follow the rail line, or is it going to come in more to 90-degree crossing, which is going to change its influence area coming in? So there's some slight tweaking that's going to occur. But in general, this is pretty similar to what you would see.
So if for us, if the council likes the concept, and right now it's, and for the public, no, it's just a concept. It's just a dream, right? So it's just a dream at this point, but there's going to be opportunities for us to have discussions with NCDOT. There's going to be opportunities to have discussions as the design of the acoustic trail moves forward, hopefully very soon. So there's going to be opportunities, and it's just to have this dream, this vision, this concept may allow us to make things move forward over time and come back with council with more concrete ideas and more concrete designs. But it gets us thinking and gives us something to shoot for. If council is so inclined that something like this would be something we'd want to pursue and to benefit the community.
Foolish not to.
Looks good.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything? Thank you.
It's in blue. It's right. It's diagonally. Yep, right there. There's Mud Creek. Right there. You see the cursor moving? That's Mud Creek right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. All right. And more exciting information. Money, even if it won't pay for this.
So Mayor Vogt, members of the City Council, I'd like to introduce Alex Norwood. Alex has been our intern for the summer. He's moving into his second year at UNC Chapel Hill in the Masters of Public Administration program. So he's been working in our office this summer, and the project that Brian and Adam gave to Alex was to work on ARP funding and provide a proposal to you with the idea that it's still a moving target, but I'll let Alex go through that. But he's done a really good job, and he'll be going back to school next Friday. And so we want to just thank him for his work with us this summer and recognize him and let him make his presentation.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so John already mentioned it. I'm in my second year of graduate school at Chapel Hill. I actually went to undergrad at Western Carolina, so that's kind of how I found the job at Hendersonville. So I'm a little familiar with the area, but I'm originally from New Bern, so I've kind of jumped all over the place. But yeah, so I'm here to give an overview of what the city has received from the American Rescue Plan passed back in April, May, and what staff recommends the city allocate the money for, and a potential framework for awarding American Rescue Plan funds to nonprofits if that's the way we wish to go. So just a little bit of basics about our place in the process. So I'm sure you guys already are aware of some of this, but Hendersonville has received around $4.5 million in American Rescue Plan funds. $2.25 million of that has been received to date, and the rest is expected to follow at the end of the year. So the money has to be obligated by the end of calendar year 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. And staff has developed a list of potential projects that would qualify for American Rescue Plan funding, ranging from water and sewer infrastructure improvements to money for nonprofit organizations. Staff has also developed an application that nonprofits could use to apply for ARP funds, and that's what I've passed out before you, if the council wishes to delegate some of that money for that purpose. So some of the main goals for the American Rescue Plan funding, so this is all coming from the Treasury Department, so a little bit of basics. It's a little bit, I don't know if confusing is the right word or frustrating, but the Treasury Department has released an interim final rule, which just doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's an interim final rule, and that's kind of a basic guidelines of how this money is to be spent. So they're expected to release the final rule at some point soon. It's been adjusted a little bit, and there's been some questions asked about this rule, but basically there is some form of guideline set by the Treasury Department to kind of say what local governments can or cannot do with the American Rescue Plan funds. So in the interim final rule, there are 4 main goals for ARP funding, and I've listed them on the screen here. So to make necessary improvements to water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure, supporting public health expenditures, replacing lost revenue caused by the pandemic, addressing negative impacts caused by the pandemic. And so those are the 4 that are listed in the interim final rule. And there's a lot of specifications under those in the rule, and staff has kind of reviewed those, and we'll make sure any projects that do get presented before council do meet that criteria. So one thing to keep in mind is that the American Rescue Plan money has been allocated to a lot of different agencies in the government. There's federal funding, there's state funding, local funding, and some in nonprofits. So we don't have, as a local government, you have to kind of go through a lot of layers of bureaucracy. So we don't have all the authorization to use it for all different things. So that you have to get through. So in order for us to spend something with the American Rescue Plan funds, it has to pass the guidance by the American Rescue Plan, federal guidance, state guidance, and any local guidance. So there's a lot of different levels of bureaucracy it has to jump through, which makes it a little bit complicated sometimes, but that's kind of what staff is here to help address. And saying that the 2 goals that staff believes that the city is in the best position to address would be the water and sewer infrastructure improvements, as well as addressing negative impacts caused by the pandemic through nonprofits and other organizations like that. So I'm going to pause here and have any questions so far about the criteria.
Okay.
A lot of stuff in a little short time. So what some other governments are doing. So a lot of governments are kind of in the same position we are right now. So they're still gathering feedback on what to do from both the community and city staff. So having meetings like this where they're kind of getting feedback from the council, whatever the body may be, on what they want to do with some of the money. So the state has kind of released what they're planning on doing with the American Rescue Plan fund money. You can see again these on the screen here. So water and sewer is a big one, workforce development, hospitality industry, improving public education, and then expanding broadband. So that's what the state has listed that their priorities will be. As far as local governments, this is all, again, kind of preliminary, but I was digging through some of the minutes from local city council meetings and some of the stuff I found. So Catawba County, they're spending about $5.3 million of their money on water and sewer infrastructure, and that's out of the $30 million they were allocated. Waynesville is reviewing a proposal to allocate about $70,000 to address homelessness, a nonprofit to address homelessness, and around $500,000 to use for action items that are going to come out of their future strategic plan. And then Buncombe County is putting together an application that basically different departments can use to apply for some of the funding. They have a lot more money. It's a little simpler there. So they'll have all the departments kind of submit requests for funding. and they'll allocate the money that way. So like I said, we're in line with other governments regarding where they are in the process. And just a reminder, we have about 4 years to really allocate all this money. So there's plenty of time to kind of, figure out what the money could best be used for. And the biggest point here is as Brian always says, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we have a lot of time to kind of make sure we're doing the right things with the right amount of money. Speaking of the money, so this is the proposed project. So this is all, again, recommendations by the staff. Now this has been official yet, but some of the recommendations that the staff have for uses of the money. So the first one, and probably the biggest one, would be for infrastructure projects. And the biggest infrastructure project would be a UV replacement system, replacement of a UV disinfection system at the wastewater treatment plant. So this system is approximately 20 years old and is aged out in regard to parts availability, electrical efficiency, and technology. So this equipment is required to disinfect the treated wastewater before it's discharged into the treatment facility into Mud Creek. And this new equipment can reduce electrical usage by as much as 40%, making the return on investment less than 7 years. So that's, again, a big chunk of the money, $2.5 million. Another infrastructure project that the city is proposing to spend this money on is $250,000 to help fund a fiber infrastructure project. So this is meant to help improve the fiber infrastructure both in the downtown area and across city properties. And so this would include connections to the new police department, the new parking deck, Fire Station 3, where that site is, public Wi-Fi in city parks, Whitmire Park, and at the train depot for public Wi-Fi for the farmers market. So this is, again, a project that's been in talks. And then there's an additional $100,000 allocated for stormwater infrastructure improvements for future city projects. So again, the new fire station coming in, the new parking deck, there's going to be some additional stormwater improvements that need to be made. So some of that money is allocated. And then on the nonprofit side of things, so the staff is recommending that $400,000 go to Interfaith Assistance Ministry to provide water bill assistance to community members who got behind on their payment due to the pandemic. So that's about the amount of money that was behind payments. So staff is recommending giving that to a nonprofit to kind of help people get past that, a lot of that debt that's been occurring.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that $400,000 taken out of the kind of the lump of money that we had intended to be used for nonprofits, or is that an additional to the lump of money that we had decided to try to use for nonprofits?
Are you talking about the $1 million for the application, or?
It is additional money. Because we had discussed setting $1 million aside. It's not part of the $1 million that we were going to set aside for nonprofits.
So speaking of the $1 million, that's the big number. So the next big section of this will be the $1 million, and I believe we've already talked about this as a council, set aside for nonprofits to apply for. So this would be done through an application process that, again, I've passed out before you, and feel free to take a look whenever. I'll get into more detail in that a little bit later on. But the nonprofits will be selected by the council, and they could use for the money for a variety of pandemic-related challenges. So it could be homelessness, food insecurity, hospitality, really anything. And the key here is COVID recovery. That's the biggest thing with the criteria is it has to be COVID related or recovery related. And that can be, from what the rule says, fairly broad, but there still needs to be that kind of specification. So staff and the council would be reviewing the applications to make sure they fall within the criteria set by all the guidelines, ARP, federal, state, to ensure that we're protected from any potential inquiries. And the nonprofits, if they did receive this money, the city would have the right to audit them at any time to make sure they're using their money for the right purpose. So later got to Angie. Okay. And then an additional $100,000, and is proposed to be used for the Connection Center. I'm not sure. I think you may have heard about this a little bit. So the county, this nonprofit organization in the county, and John may be able to help me with the details here, is setting up a Connection Center in the county that will essentially be a place for people experiencing homelessness to kind of receive all the services in one spot. So it kind of helps eliminate the transportation issue. And John, where's the location of that?
So the location is at Grace Blue Ridge Church, off Brooklyn Avenue, off Spartanburg Highway. It was a former furniture.
Prim,
Yeah.
Spearman Prim.
Spearman Prim, yeah.
So in that area. And it's a cooperative effort of several nonprofits and public entities. We'll have a presentation to the city council at a future meeting.
Yeah, that's $100,000 there. And then if you're doing the math, it leaves about $150,000. And one of the proposals staff has recommended is to put this toward affordable housing resource reserves or resources. And there's multiple organizations, housing assistance, who I know this is here, has been working a lot to build workforce housing in the city. So it could go to some of their projects to help purchase land for that nonprofit and just kind of try to provide more workforce housing for the area. I'll stop there for any questions. That was a lot of information.
So simply recommendation or suggestions from council. This is the council will ultimately decide the priorities. But as we were looking at the regulations and looking for ways to that we needed to spend this money, trying to get a couple of things we looked at is projects that really have a long-term impact. That's something we can look down the road and see an impact in the community. From the infrastructure side, the UV replacement is a project that benefits everybody on the sewer system because it expands or gives us a little greater capacity at the wastewater plant with the majority of those folks that are impacted. A majority of our sewer customers currently are in the city limits. I felt like that was appropriate. The fiber infrastructure helps the local government as well as it. If there's opportunities in the future to partner with the private sector to provide fiber infrastructure, that expansion, particularly to the southeast as it relates to Fire Station 3, as it relates to a Whitmire building, just the more fiber we have that is accessible by private companies in the future, the less cost they have to get fiber into the neighborhood. So we thought that was positive. And the water bill assistance would be just to help us or help the folks who are in need of really getting away from the late penalties and paying their bills for the city. And then you had the nonprofit.
What was the total on the water bills?
It's roughly about 400,000 that we've
400,000.
allocated. So that's all of our outstanding bills that would cover what's outstanding with folks that have payment plans and things, that are delinquent. So our plan is to ask IAM Interfaith Assistance to manage that for us and send those folks there to go through their application process. And any money that's not spent would come back to us.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. All right. And so now we can move on to the nonprofit applications. I did pass that out earlier, so we'll look into more detail on that. So this is the application I put together. The nonprofits might be able to use to apply for that $1 million in funds. And I should have clarified earlier. So this is $1 million in funds, but it'll be over 4 years. So the plan would be to allocate $250,000 a year to nonprofits through this application process. And so this is still a draft of the application, and we can make some edits if there's any comments from the council. But essentially, it's a pretty basic application. It's very similar to the special appropriations application that the city uses. So it starts off with basic information about the organization and about the money requested for the project, information about the project to make sure it meets that criteria for all the guidelines, some budget information, again, just to make sure it's very fiscally responsible and they're using the money right. And then a section on legal acknowledgements at the end there, just again, clarifying what role the nonprofits have with this money and what role the city has in, making sure they're being used for the right purpose and stuff. Maybe a second look over that. But if there's any questions about the application, I'd be happy to answer them too. So.
Questions?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We can move on.
Okay. So then if you guys are okay with going forward with this application or have any comments, the idea would be to post the application sometime in August, end of August, beginning of August, and then have that deadline set 45 days after the posting of the application. And so that would be sometime in September. And then in the September-October period, the applications will be reviewed by the assistant city manager and the budget manager and any other staff that would be able to help review those applications. And then we would present all of the applications regardless of, basically provided they meet the criteria to city council in November for approval. And then sometime in November and December, we'll be notifying the recipients, distributing the money based on when the council does approve those applications. And then that process would repeat each year until 2024, when we have to spend all the money by. So, questions about the timeline here? And again, just one more look at, John did a really good description of it, but this is just again, the breakdown of what we are proposing the funds be used for. So again, about 2.85 million of the funds were proposed to go to infrastructure improvements, and then around 1.65 million for nonprofit assistance. And with that, I'll take any questions.
There was a pressure zone area at the top. That was a water sewer project that we had discussed. Is that?
So we've had the conversation. We felt like that basically the UV project was being funded also, but we felt like it was more appropriate to use ARP money that's dedicated for Hendersonville with a Hendersonville project. And then we would use water and sewer money to cover the Fleetwood project in Laurel Park and the meters. So we felt like it was more appropriate to dedicate this, since it came to the city, and that money be focused on something that benefit the citizens of Hendersonville. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's reasonable.
Number 4 on your application.
Sure.
You've got a list of things here. It says check all or apply. Does this cover everything that fell within the goals of funding, in your opinion?
It covers a vast majority of the ones that people would likely be applying for. It would be a very long list if we were to include everything on there.
That's what I was gonna say. Do you need to have a other?
Yeah, that might be a good idea. I can add another other section for them to.
I was looking at it, I was like, man, okay.
Yeah, again, it's a quite a long document. So
Yeah.
it's a
A lot of
There's
thought
a lot
going
in
into
there,
it. Yeah.
One other thing I will interject at this point, when the money first came out, the language was very broad, and we thought that the money could go to any nonprofit. Right. And so when we first made our first recommendation proposal to council, then we took out money from your budgetary process for all nonprofits, thinking that they could qualify for ARP money. Since we've gotten into the guidelines, there are going to be nonprofits that don't qualify for ARP funding.
Can you give an example of, not specifically a name, but maybe is it based off of services or level?
It's basically, if it cannot be tied to COVID, then they cannot use ARP money. So
Can't they all essentially tie it to COVID because they all lost funding during COVID? I'm just a little confused.
so we don't know.
It's a broad definition. They'll have to tie it back, and then we'll have to evaluate how this is either removing some negative impact caused by COVID. But
Remember, this
it's
is
a
an
broad
interim
definition.
Final
Um,
rule.
The other
Interim
thing,
final rule.
yeah, the other thing to remember though is on the legal acknowledgement is it still has to be something that the city could do. The federal definition is broad because it's written for national, right?
So where I was going for that, we are going to recommend revenue wise, we did really well last year. We're going to recommend to council that we allocate $100,000 like you normally would, and go ahead and go through that process at your August next week at your August city council meeting, and dole out, for the lack of a better term, that $100,000 like you normally would. So in addition to the $250 each year, you would have you're in fact having $350 that nonprofit groups could apply for. The ARP money will be more restrictive or competitive. The $100,000 will be your traditional special appropriation. So that is our thought at this process, if you want to do that. But that would be a conversation council would need to have. But our proposal was to put that on your August 5th agenda.
I have an additional question about this $400,000 water bill balance. Is that among only City of Hendersonville residents, or is that among all of our water customers?
That is all of our customers.
Which would be including also county
That's
water
correct.
customers.
It would.
Is Henderson County helping with that?
At this point, they are not.
Okay.
You could kind of look at it as an indirect way to get our revenue
Mhm.
that the enterprise fund depends on. It's really
Yeah.
a way to look at it.
And we were wanting to help folks with that anyway. And I think at this point, I think it's a good move. Whoever came up with including everyone on it, I think that's the right thing to do because it's the city that's furnishing the water. I think it's a good move.
Other questions? For that 100,000, we do already have the applications that
Yes,
came
ma'am.
through.
We have those that came
earlier.
as part of the budget. Yes.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
Well done, Alex.
Hope you have learned something in this process.
Yeah, again, I'll give like a praise to the staff. It's been a wonderful internship. I'm leaving next Friday, but they've been wonderful. John's been awesome. Adam, Ryan, everybody's I've worked with them. So just
Okay.
give them
Thank
a
you.
plus on that.
Glad to have you with us. Okay. All right. That is the end of our agenda. Unless someone has something they want to bring up. We are adjourned. Very good. Thank you.